No music.
Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I am your host, Rob, broadcasting to you as usual from the Pinos Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I am in the Extreme Studios with RDV from the Great Midwest. Tonight we're continuing our little mini bromance with one JCVD, Jean-Claude Van Damme, the muscles from Brussels, the great, beautiful-looking guy who's got a very attainable physique. And I got to tell you, RDV, I hadn't watched Kickboxer in years. I just remember us talking about Bloodsport last week, going, hey, which one is which?
Yeah.
Have the conversation, which we will have tonight, of which one's better. I'll say this about Kickboxer. I like it a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. There's going to be some things we're going to get into about it. I really appreciate a lot of what they do in there, and almost like the philosophical stuff in here and the on-location stuff there too. But I'm really looking forward to talking about which one's better. But overall, a very strong follow-up to Bloodsport. If you weren't convinced by Bloodsport that Jean-Claude could be the head of a film, I think this seals the deal for you. This is obviously a movie that people picked up on his rising stardom and really lashed onto it. So I think a lot of people think it's his best film. I'm going to disagree and say it's Bloodsport, and we'll just discuss that later.
We'll agree on that.
It's okay, good. This is on the short list to me of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies to watch. You have to watch it if you're Jean-Claude.
I got to say though, the fight scene at the end is better than Bloodsport. I think at least as far as well, in a sense, it fits more the Mortal Kombat thing.
Right. I can understand that. I get it. Okay. But give us some initial thoughts you've got of this film after a rewatch. It's been a while.
Actually, like I said, so watching this again, one of the reasons I've never really liked this movie as much as Bloodsport, because this is the one that has the brother who is actually I think his name's Eric in this one. Can't remember. I'm trying to remember because I know
forgettable.
Kurt is the main. That's his character. Yeah, Eric the Eliminator Sloane. Yeah. I always call him the Mark Merrill. The guy who was with someone and then you forget about him because he is forgettable. What's that?
He's literally a few miles down the road from where I'm at because he has a fitness business here in San
Francisco. Like I said, he's in here. He's actually a legitimate fighter. A lot of the people in here too. Even the Tong guy is actually a legitimate fighter too. There's two guys that make up the character, but so I like that. I appreciate it. They actually just like Bloodsport. We actually had guys in here that actually are karate fighters or Muay Thai fighters. So they actually know what they're doing, versus having someone come in and just okay, we're just going to do fight choreography and that's it, and then have an actor do it. So it's kind of different back in the day. I love the fact where this is actually filmed too, and over in Hong Kong, and and right around there, like I said, I love the music in the very beginning. And then I always forget that the Stan Bush's song, Never Surrender, is the ending credits song.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I always thought it was like in like the middle part when he's training. I thought it was but said it's the ending song. So just like Commando has, we fight for love as the ending song. So honestly, we're watching that again. So learning more about the film, because I haven't watched this film in probably about 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. It is very forgettable, other than the fight scenes and his brother being crippled and he has to get revenge.
Dance scene and the training.
So the two most scenes that everyone talks about is the dancing scene at the bar, where he gets drunk off several shots of "Kiss of Death," as it's translated to, and then the old man just hits on the jukebox, and it happens to be in stereo, so we still hear it. Then he starts dancing.
It's such a James Brown.
Yeah. It sounded like I thought it was James Brown at first, and I realized, it's a cover of James Brown or something similar. And so I thought it was interesting with that. And then you also had the boss there too. I've never read this before too, but the guy who manages Tong Po in the fights is at the bar too with the guys. Yeah. I've never put that two and two together because I never really pay attention to the guys in the background. Because like I said, that guy's always been kind of like an extra.
Shot though a little bit.
Yeah,
watching.
Yeah. So we get all the fighters to fight him in the bar scene. He's doing the splits. He's dancing with the girls. He's punching the guy in the face, and kicks the guy on the table, falls in the water. And I'm just thinking that poor the bar owner has to go replace all that shit. But yeah, so the fight scene in the bar, and then you have the fight scene toward the end where they're fighting with the old school way. which is like unlike the Kumite, they're allowed to wear their own gear. They're wearing like diapers, man, and then they have their face taped up and they have glass on it. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like AEW now, because that's what they do now in AEW. They have the tape and they get the bucks of glass. I've seen this too. It's dumb.
They're ripping all this old school stuff off, and
I mean, people pop for it.
And like leg kicks and the effect that would have. And
Yeah.
remember before MMA really took off?
Yep.
This time was just tough band competitions and their early days of fighting where it was almost no holds
Yeah.
bar. There's a bit more rules now, right?
And
Jesus.
this was now. This is actually more of Jean-Claude Van Damme getting a chance to shine and do his roundhouse kicks like he does with his legs. Where Bloodsport was kind of held back, reserved a little bit when he's fighting.
Yeah, he hadn't established his gimmick yet.
No, so he's kind of doing like what was the Bruce Lee kind of like the going this. I noticed I was like, he didn't do that in Kicksport or I'm sorry, Bloodsport.
Mm-hmm.
So in this one is a little different though. Also, we get to see him and when they do the training montage with the old man, keeping in line with the tradition where you go to a country and then you get this wise old master. He teaches you his forbidden art or secret art, that he's never taught anywhere else, and he uses it to get revenge on the bad guy who did something to you. But I love
the easiest way to describe that though.
Yeah.
Anybody that might not have seen this movie.
Yeah.
It's called "Take My Money."
Yeah.
How can you go wrong with being taught a secret form, a kata, right? Or death touch or this or that or whatever, because obviously he did death touch with the bricks in the first movie, right? So in here, what was he going to learn? Of course, the kicks, but the training stuff with the bamboo being tied and stretching the guy.
He has to break the tree.
That never gets old. That never gets old in any of these movies.
Yeah, and we've joked about this tutorial. We done a review years ago on the channel with our friend Angleton, who'd actually been Aaron had been in there over where this movie was shot and stuff. And he said, like, do you know how far he had to freaking walk to get to this hidden temple and stuff? No, you had to take like a plane, right?
No, and you know what? Just like from Dumb and Dumber, I don't care.
I know, right? And like I said, it's make believe. It's not real. The Kumite does not exist.
There's been a lot of on my YouTube feed lately and shorts and all that a renaissance of Russell Crowe, but in particular, a movie that seems to have grown in its earnestness. And of course, we're talking about Maximus and the role that he played there in that movie. What the hell's the name of it? Gladiator, right?
Gladiator, yeah.
And the part had to do with the sequel coming out, which to me really wasn't a good movie. But that being said, there's the opening scene is, him walking and his back's to you and he's looking around, looking at the bird, and he's putting his hands to the wheat field and all that. And it's like a circle of life because he dies and then sees his family or whatever it is at the end. And it's a very moralistic type movie, right? Mm-hmm. So there's something about these nature shots and stuff like that I always like when people put them in. And there's actually a term, I think, in movie films where you put something that's just kind of like a slice of life that has nothing to do with the plot. It's just like a little extraneous. But here we get some of those scenes where he's training in this old, legitimate, desolate village or whatever you want to call it, but also the shrine, if you want to call it that, and all that, where he's watching the eagles and the birds and all that stuff, and he's just having a moment with nature and he's finding himself. It seems kind of cheesy and all that, but when you do it right, it always seems to hit home, or at least that's the effect. And I appreciated that simple-minded nature of this film, despite the fact that it's a dumb film. No, it's fun. No,
like I said, it's not a dumb film, but it is. If you just watch Bloodsport and now you're watching this back to back, and you're like, this almost a similar movie, but it doesn't. It stands out differently as far as Bloodsport. I said Bloodsport had the help of some more supporting cast in this. Mm-hmm. As far as you had Booger, who was a big name, Revenge of the Nerds. So you're having him in there too, and being a likable character. Even the guy who was supposed to show him around town. This movie, you get what's his name? It's what guy who plays Winston in here. They don't list him in the actual credits here.
Oh, the voice guy,
yeah. But he's pretty much he's like, all right, this is the guy who basically he since Vietnam and he's been hanging out in this area here too. No, he doesn't want to get involved, but he's friends with the old man who trained Kurt, aka Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he doesn't want to get involved with the criminal stuff he's done. basically Kurt's is going to challenge. He's basically proven that he can fight in the bar. But then they go to come to town, in a village where the old man who's been staying there, and they kidnap Kurt's brothers in a wheelchair and hold him hostage. Said you got to throw the match, or we'll kill your brother. So the old man goes and basically takes a car, puts a brick on the old school. There's no one in the car, and and drives it into the barn where they're holding his Kurt's brother hostage with armed goons and stuff. And the guy looks in there, there's no one there. The old man just goes, hits in the back of the head, it knocks him out. But then he looks out, there's a bunch of guys with guns getting ready to shoot him. But then here comes Winston, with his van driving through. Or actually, no, he doesn't drive through the van. He actually has a grenade launcher. He has his M4 out, and he comes in, and then he's like Winston. And the old man's like, "Where you been?" He's like, "Man, you can't believe it. There's a hell of a traffic jam up here. There's a fight going on in town." And you get the one liner. It's just it didn't really, the character didn't really sit well with me. I don't know what it is. He just didn't seem like, it's not like you're getting with Michael Dudikoff. Was it Richard Roundtree, or what was the guy that was with Michael Dudikoff in American Ninja?
I don't think it was Roundtree. It's the other guy. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it didn't really land, the jokes and stuff. And I think
part of it is because he was kind of psychotic with PTSD from Vietnam, and he decided to stay over there in Bangkok. But they tried making him kind of like the cute, funny sidekick, and I agree with you, it didn't work because at this point I'm watching as a teenager going, okay, I get they decided to stay over there. I guess
it's not over the top. If it had been over the top like a Commando, where he shows up and he's like, "Oh, you son of a bitch," If you would.
I think I agree with you. That's a bit of those are low moments in the movie. Not many.
Like I said, this was more of a vehicle to show off Van Damme's more of his moves that you didn't really see in the first movie. You could see a little bit, but this is more a training montage scene in line with the Jackie Chan Drunken Master, stuff like this. But it's American version, and it's basically this would I think American Ninja was the same year as this, or just a year prior to this.
I think it was a little earlier, actually.
I had to look it up, but overall, though, this movie's been out since 1989. And I've watched this movie about 3 times. And I was telling you behind the scenes, I never knew that Tong Paulo was 2 different guys. I never knew the bad guy. I know that they had to shave his head and stuff, but they're apparently one of the actors actually is a real fighter, Michael Qissi.
Qissi.
Qissi, your thing's going. It's Qissi. But I've seen him before in Lionheart. With the actual hair and stuff, he looked like like Arsenio Hall type in that movie, or
He's so he's North African.
Yeah. So then you see him, and so I never knew he was here as Tong Paulo, is because there's 2 actors, and it just threw me off. I was like, when I learned that, I was like that. Then I went to go look in, like, oh my gosh, if you can actually pause your VHS player, or your DVD, whatever you got, and sometimes you can actually see the difference when they switch the guy out. I think he's the main face for Tong Paulo when he's fighting, and then when he's not fighting, it's the other guy. But
I will tell you, his character was interesting, and I will say this: as much as the first movie, Bloodsport, was the kumite and the songs, and it's nice to see the difference of styles. You're right; it doesn't go very deep into a particular style, or like we said, JC hadn't trademarked his gimmick yet. At least established it in terms of movies, which is the kick, right? That's what he's known for, right? In the splits.
Yeah.
So we get that here, but here's the thing with the bad guy. Honestly, as cheesy as this movie can seem like that, and again, I think a young kid can watch it and not be offended by what goes on here. It's not graphic really in any nature, but the reveal when he's the corner man for his brother early on, and he's walking, he's like looking for ice or whatever it was, and he's hearing a thunk, thunk, thunk. And then he goes around the corner and he sees the guy with his leg kicking the bar and the plaster like in a cheap building coming off. That's badass, bro. And I'm telling you, you don't just kick people and all that. You have to toughen your legs up. You have to strike it a certain way with the angle of your shin and all that stuff. So there is a thing to it, Muay Thai. And this movie, whether people like it or not, or it was just whatever, it really did for Muay Thai what Chuck Norris just did for regular karate in America as far as making it popular. Because like I say, boxing here in Florida in the South, boxing was always popular, especially amateur boxing. But boxing was very big in HBO all through the 80s. Tyson was hitting his prime by this point. I've been watching him for years. I've been watching boxing for 5-10 years at this point. Very, very popular. Not as popular as it used to be now. And same with MMA. We had tough man contests, those kinds of things. So all these contests all around there, you would see eventually it would get monetized because of cable and pay-per-views. That's the interesting thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here, him walking in, I think it's a great reveal of the bad guy. And the less we know about him, the more I think it's better suited, because it's not about him.
Yeah.
This is like Clubber Lang, no depth to the character at all.
Sure. Well, he doesn't talk. He's not. Yeah. I mean, I've always said, like, thought my dream on match is like Tong Pao versus Bolo Young. I was like, having them like either team up or having them fight against one another in a match would be kind of cool for characters.
My money.
Yeah. I was looking up. Okay, I found out who the guy plays Winston. It's Haskell V. Anderson. He was in a 1976 blaxploitation movie called Brotherhood of Death with Roy Jefferson. Do you remember Roy Jefferson? Washington Redskins. Roy Jefferson. He was from the Washington Redskins. Roy Lee Jefferson. Yeah. So Haskell Anderson was in a movie with him. They're both in a movie called The Brotherhood of Death, which is basically a low budget, 1966 action film in the genre, the blaxploitation genre. Mm-hmm. And so you had Roy Jefferson, Lee Tyree, and it says Haskell Anderson, and then you had the film featured several members, including Jefferson of the Washington Redskins, professional football player, the football league, and then it had a couple other people. But it was basically three young men who basically leave their small town hometown to join the United States Army and fight the Vietnam War, and then when they come back, they have to take on the Ku Klux Klan. So it was like him coming into this movie and being the ex-Vietnam soldier, I'm like, he's just reprising his role. So basically that's what it felt like.
Fred Williamson was definitely in some of those movies.
Yeah.
And Fred Fryer, that played Hunter in the TV in the 80s, he played, I think, for the Rams. And of course, Rocky Balboa's big opponent, my personal favorite bad guy and all that, from Rocky 1, 2, and then who died. Paulo Creed, that was played by Carl Weathers, who played professional football either. So it's not unusual. I didn't know the guy.
No, it's not unusual. And here's the thing about this: I've noticed the more we watch older movies like this, we're seeing a lot of football players entering in movies.
Well, here's the thing with football players: a lot of them from the '60s and the civil unrest and all that after the assassination of JFK and all this stuff in the '70s. Like I say, it was a really brutal kind of a decade with inflation, getting off the gold standard and stuff, socially and all that. So you definitely had this like two sides of the coin. You didn't, the American family was being disincentivized in pop culture, kind of speaking, and the idea of women going to work and all that kind of stuff. The progressive nature was making its way full throttle into everything: songs, music, television. Columbus, they go brawless, and it's intentional. And they mention it. It is what it is, right? But with blaxploitation movies, with how much Bruce Lee and karate got into the black audience in general, I would sit there and say that they loved seeing themselves being put on stage because they weren't what they felt equally represented, or they were in certain roles, back in the 50s and 60s, with the exception of maybe say Sidney Poitier and others, right? So this was a big deal that like Blackula was a big film. I liked that. I've talked about that with you before. So seeing Fred Williamson do all that, and Sanford Son was a really
popular. We had O.J. Simpson popping up in Hollywood doing comedy roles.
So that was a whole little sub genre in itself, was the black action hero kind of thing. Shaft, obviously.
Yep.
So you're hitting on a point here with a character that if you watch the movie, you go, who the fuck is this guy? I don't give a shit. Right? but from the 70s Redskins is the guy that played for your Green Bay Packers. Died of cancer, and Theismann was on the team, I think.
But so that was Brotherhood of Death I was talking about. That was Haskell Anderson. This guy is in this movie though, but he was in
the show. Can you get this sort of tangent, ladies?
Yeah. But I'll just say that it is interesting though to see that that. I'm gonna say that now the genius of Vince McMahon. What I really like, I don't care what he did or didn't do, whatever. They grab linebackers and have them bring him into wrestling and give him a chance. The Rock made it so big, and is a guy who was a former football player that probably would have stayed at home and would have had to be working at Home Depot.
Well, he was in the family business.
But
the family line was.
I'm just saying, if they would have gone to wrestling, probably wouldn't have been as rich as he is today. But
And Tom
anyway, though,
West, the quad father, was the person from the golden age of bodybuilding that competed late 70s and early 80s, along with Arnold Schwarzenegger, got hired by man to bring that body type in. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they did not want to do luchador stuff.
Yeah. So basically, filming locations for this movie, basically, we're obviously in Thailand, Bangkok, and stuff. You know, and then in the ancient city of Athia or Athia, or what it's called. It's Ayutthaya. And then they also had his Master Jean. His jungle house was basically was built in Sai Kung, basically at the Xing Feng Studios. So it wasn't even actually outside. It was actually like a studio. At least for his house and stuff. It was actually so when they're outside, you know, that was actually probably outside, but the rest of it was inside a studio when they showed him do the training stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it was nice.
Your description earlier about the fight being better here at the end than what we saw in the other ones got merit. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, okay, so we're getting more of what can we do to make increase the fight scene of the last one? Okay, let's focus, with Jean-Claude Van Damme, let's oil him up with baby oil. Let's just make him shine. We'll show off his physique. We already established he's a pretty boy. Girls were dancing him, earlier on. They wanted to make him the pretty boy for Canon Films, or at least going forward, because they needed someone else to replace Chuck Norris, who was exiting at the time. Mm-hmm. So they brought and they already had American Ninja with the Michael Dudikoff going on too, but they're like, just Jean-Claude Van Damme, the muscle from Brussels, let's bring him in, let's do this stuff, give him a chance. He has an accent, ladies like him, and let's make this film where we can actually show off more of his physique. This is a movie that you can take your girlfriends to, because you know what? They're gonna get hot and bothered for Jean-Claude Van Damme, who at this point, as far as I know, was not using coke yet. But then again, at the very end here, when he's fighting, when he's doing, he could have been high on coke for all I know, but. The glass, like I said, adding in the element where we're gonna use your gloves with the glass on it too. It was cool. Now we're adding weapons into this. He's got a guy who kind of looks like Goro from freaking Mortal Kombat, but minus 2 arms. He's got the hair and stuff. Very imposing guy. Once again, silent treatment. The guy doesn't say anything, and the only problem with this movie is that Jean-Claude Van Damme is not really fighting against the guy. He's trying to hold his own because he can't fight. But as soon as his brother shows up, then he just beats the shit out of the guy.
Yeah, of course.
So it's like it takes away. That's the only downside. It takes away the magic of what we have with Bolo Young, who was very impressive. And didn't need a handicap. This guy needed a handicap apparently, because he's all looks, but he can't really fight. He fought against Kurt's brother, who basically was cocky and wasn't really that great of a fighter in the movie. They made it. He fought against American guys, but he never fought against people who do other stuff.
Styles make fights and weight classes.
But also this too. It's also felt like, man, I'm like, this felt like it very felt 80s. This could have easily been done shot in the beginning. When in the park scene, this could have been like Miami. If I watch a lot of Miami Vice, it's like I'm like, man, this really looks similar to I'm just waiting for Crockett and Tubbs to show up, try to bust this illegal fighting ring. But yeah, Kurt basically want to get revenge, and just he falls in love with the master, his trainer's daughter and stuff, and then she's like, don't fight, and then his brother comes to he's like, I don't want you to fight. You'll get Kurt. You'll end up like me in a wheelchair. But he's like, no, brother, you're the dumbass that didn't know Muay Thai. I know Muay Thai. I was trained by a master in the jungle. So, like I said, but overall, I still like this movie. I still think this movie and Bloodsport are his 2 best movies that he's ever done. Although say Time Cop, because it's sci-fi, is in 3rd place for me.
Well, it feels very big, Time Cop, to me.
Yeah, it's time. Like I said. But overall, I said this is the first 2 we're actually seeing him being a lead character, being a positive role. Before this, he was in Black Eagle, where he was a bad person, and he also was in No Retreat, No Surrender, where he was also a bad guy too. So him being that bad guy in that movie, No Retreat, No Surrender, with the Bruce Lee kind of like stalker guy kid, and then hearing that song by Stan Bush, Never Surrender, I was like, whoa, that's kind of ironic, but overall though, I said, when he's not acting, he's not talking. Jean-Claude Van Damme, when he's fighting, I think he's better at that. He just really felt like he was like a really childish boy. And I don't know if that's what they're going for, but he just felt like he was like Michael Cera in some of those scenes.
That's one of the key things about this film. Like I say, establishing him, not just his kicks and his looks and all that. I don't think they're going for any sort of like homosexual subcontext with him because he is pretty and he's a very good looking guy. Sometimes you want to play to both crowds, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's the case. I don't get it. I really honestly believe he's one of the last guys that I can think of that when I look at as a male role model, especially for that time, with, like you said, Chuck Norris getting older, and transition and other stuff. I mean, it was still going on with Arnold, even though he still had a few big films after this. He was trying to get out of that stuff. So it's like he was one of the new ones that you just go, hey, this is a guy that's a good-looking guy, nice physique, martial artist. Okay, maybe he's just got the accent. Maybe he's not a rich baritone voice or whatever. But here's the appeal, I think, to him. I think he could have appealed to a young boy, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, in like that superhero type that's not like a crude, masculine, kind of vulgar, like a Wolverine, an R-rated Wolverine might like appeals to an adult male, right? But we're looking at somebody that's just like kind of superheroish in a very sort of, you said it's boyish sort of way, because he has that, he has that boyish, just that charm to him, and I think that's
got that Justin Bieber thing going.
Not like that. That's too manufactured. I don't. That's too Disney.
No, but I mean, like, he has an innocent guy. This is a guy. This isn't Lionheart yet. He doesn't seem rugged. He still seems like he's about 19, 20 years old, and it actually seems more believable if he's supposed to be a younger character. I'm not sure what his age was in this movie, but he had to be close to 30, probably 26, 25. I'm guessing.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think it's a good film. Definitely worth a watch. If I have to pick between the two, I'm picking the other one.
Yeah, Bloodsport had the more comedy in it, though. As far as him, the guy Forrest Whitaker chasing him across the boat stuff, them falling in the water, people laughing, him just like, haha, he's Bugs Bunny, and they're Elmer Fudd. He made fun of them. This was a little more serious. But here's the thing about these movies: you can watch these with a 10-year-old.
That's exactly my point.
There's no nudity in. Well, okay, no, that's it. There's one scene here though, when Winston takes him to a strip club. You'd probably want to skip that if you're with your kid,
But it seems so. Even that seems so watered down. Like it's like, it's not a big deal.
Well, they were topless. They had false. They had did a little falsy glued on stickers. So.
False.
Whatever you want to call them, because not tassels, but they're glue-ons, I guess. Nip slip covers, I guess. Whatever.
Well, no, I will say this: I would watch the next coming years, like we've talked about, Time Cop, his other ones, because I always liked him. So I was like, if he's going to be in something, I'm going to watch it. And then when we started getting into like Double Team, and when he was really going off the bender with coke and all that, I was like, well, I guess this guy's gone, and I really had no martial artist that I could get into at the time for a long time. Even Jackie Chan, I already knew who he was, seen a lot of his stuff. Rumble of Brooks kind of was finally the second attempt in the United States to come popular again. So that's one thing. But I didn't like that goofy kind of comic style. But I still like his movies. It's just I like Jean-Claude. I was disappointed. And I still remember, and we've talked about this briefly, in the 90s, that was the resurgence of not just VHS, but DVD, right? And home sound systems, theater systems, especially in the late 90s, right? So to me, it was really cool because now I could go watch the sequel to this, even if it doesn't star him. I could go watch Universal Soldier and 3, 4, and 5, whether he was in or not.
Here's the other thing, though. It's funny you say that, because they do a sequel to this. Jean-Claude is no longer attached to any of those Kickboxer films. He's not doing stuff. So instead we get Sasha Mitchell for the next couple ones. And I'm like, cousin Cody from Step by Step. I was just like, no, I ain't buying this. And just like, I watched I watched Kickboxer 2, and I was like, never again. It was just not the same. I said, once you take away the main draw of the character and you put someone else in there, and it's like, all right, now we're gonna focus on this guy. unless you're going to have them do a team up in the third movie, then come back. I don't want to see it. It's like the whole thing with the Highlander. Let's bring in the TV Duncan MacLeod to kill off the main Highlander guy in Endgame. Sorry, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen a 30-year-old movie, but it was dumb, and a lot of people hate it. But what can you do though? But except maybe just not watch the movies, and I chose after that, I said I'm not watching the rest of these. Let me go watch Treat Williams in the Substitute.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. There's legitimate, I think, longing for what we would call that's the current term is second screen that Netflix never uses because nobody's paying attention because things suck and whatever, and what people are bothered doing on their devices and stuff. But the secondary market, I think there could still be some interest in that, and we'll see whether or not that ever gets revisited. But for me, it's one thing to just have sequelize to make 10 of these movies, and it's just to make money, and I off the name, I understand it, but sometimes they're watchable. And when I saw the remake, Dave Bautista's in it, and I think
that's in 2024,
18, whatever it is, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's got Gina Carano in it, George St. Pierre, JCVD's back in there, but this time he's
the guy training,
right?
Is it? Yeah.
And I remember watching that going. That kind of renewed my interest in JCVD because he did like a solo movie that people went, no, this is actually really fucking good. And it just seemed like his movies started to pick up a little bit better in terms of quality. He got back on the screen. So it's like in the twilight of his career, he got a little second wind in it. And so it's interesting after a long period of time, 20, 25 years, you go back to this and you change roles a little bit. Sometimes that can work. There's something there about this franchise.
Maybe it is good. I don't know. I haven't watched it. I'll take your word for it, though. But I watched Creed, and I was like, I'm out.
I checked the box after the first movie. I watched the second. I tried the third, and
Creed was depressing.
Everyone
you loved in those films, Rocky films, are dead.
Yeah, well,
except for Sloane.
Yeah,
and his son who had nothing to do with them whatsoever, and like so it's like, what the heck.
I will say, for anybody that's a fan of martial arts, I don't love it, but I'm extremely entertained by it, and it's very rare that I say that. You know that, and I know you haven't quite seen it yet, but I've been watching the second season of a TV show, Korean, that's called Bloodhounds, about a guy that's a fighter and his buddy, who's like his trainer, a little bit of a fighter, but more of a trainer. And they somehow get involved, and it reminds me of JCVD a little bit in that while there's a metric fuck ton of action in it, it still has that wholesomeness or whatever, because there's a lot of politeness in Korean. There's no real sex or anything. Yeah. But in every 40, 50-minute episode, there's 8-10 episodes a season, there's at least probably a 10-minute long fight that's shot with long form where you can see all that stuff out there, and it's freaking brutal, and I absolutely love it, and I just can't stop watching it. It's pretty simple and pretty basic, but I'd recommend if anybody's a fan of martial arts, check out season 1 on Netflix. Season 2 just dropped. Season 1 was a couple years ago. Yep. The guys, I don't know that they're big names. I don't know the Korean audience or whatever.
If the fighting is legit, who cares?
No, but I'm telling you, there's times where I've wanted to send you a clip and say, hey, you're getting at least one of these fights in every episode, and it's exhausting. It's so big and drawn out, and it's good. And I go, whoever's working on that team, I think they've found out what works and how you film it, because that's the only watchable martial arts stuff recently. Unless you're getting a one-off film with a special guest star.
Like I said, you have a formula that works. You stick to the formula. You don't change it in season 3 and kill off one of the main characters.
No, but Bloodhounds. Well, if you choose to watch it at any time, and we may end up reviewing, that's fine. I sometimes get an urge to just review season 1 by myself roughly and talk about it, because it's definitely a movie. It would something like that. I don't think would exist if there wasn't the American audience driving Netflix to look for material because of the action stuff from the 70s. And
sure. Isn't it funny on in Netflix for here in America, there's a lot of foreign stuff, because you know why? Because no one's watching the American stuff. They're watching foreign stuff. Well, yeah, I mean, I said I'm not really into the K dramas, but man, when you get into these Korean movies, and fighting movies, whatever, a lot of times it's just done well. It's and it doesn't have to be fighting movies. It just doesn't have to be where it's dumbed down and catered to you. They respect the audience. They don't throw in forced agendas and stuff. It's like you need, talk talking about LGBTQ crow. That's great. If you want that, they have a logo. I'll watch that if I want to watch it. But it's like everything has to shoehorn everything in there, and just push their ideology. And if you don't agree with that, then it's like, well, too bad. You can't watch anything else. You can only watch our stuff. It's like, what is this? I don't like propaganda in films and TV unless it's pro-American because I'm American. I don't want this anti-American stuff.
Fight to survive.
Exactly.
That's right. Kumite.
Yeah, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow night, 9 o'clock Eastern, the Young 20-something Professional Fly will be continuing our review of Forever Night, Season 2, Episode 2. And yes, to answer all the speculation from the super fans we have out there regarding Forever Night, and just so everybody knows, what we do is we typically dive into a show that one of us selects because maybe they haven't seen it or they don't get it. And so it's not a group decision, it's an individual decision. And when we do Forever Night, once that season's over, we usually break it up with a Bond movie. Then we do a Brixel, and I usually do a different show. We usually like campy, gothy stuff, so it usually kind of revolves around that. And then we do something. We've been doing Columbo because it's a phenomenal show. We really love it. So probably a year from now is when we might do Season 3 of Forever Night. Of course, it depends on the demand of the audience that we have and the viewership. So if you have anything you'd like us to consider, let us know. There's so much stuff out there that's possible, and I know RDB and I cover a lot of action stuff. Vix and I do a lot of the camp and goof stuff and all that too. So it's a nice little crossover here representing 3 different generations. Any other final thoughts from you?
I was going to say this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, Martin Ferrero joins the cast of Miami Vice in episode 7. He'll go on to become a regular. Is Izzy Marino, the informant, the long-suffering informant that they have.
The Eggman.
If I gotta say though,
not the Noog Man.
is Izzy Marino, that character, is as annoying he is. He grows on you, and he actually gets better with the series goes on.
I agree.
I'm just like, he's one of the things. I'm glad they kept him on it as a season regular, but like I said, I just got into season 3, and they broke the Michael Mann's rule: no earth tones. They went serious, and then they had to get rid of one of their cast members because his ratings dropped. I wonder why. When you break the formula, so
yeah, those are the bean counters above you that make that.
And they kill off one of my favorite characters and for no reason, just because.
No spoilers.
Spoilers. It's too late. Too late, man. I was gonna say I was apparently I'm not the only one. Back in '86 when they did this show got pissed on by fans. They pretty much just stopped watching it after that. I guarantee you, because
I was there, bro.
Oh my gosh, why would you go back?
I didn't. I did out of steam, but it's.
I want if Michael Mann's alive today. I think he still is. I've ever meet him and be like, bro, what was season 3 about? Like, was that the corporate? Was that NBC telling you to change things, or did you do it yourself? Like, who the fuck decided to change everything? And one of the ratings down. Ratings went down because you changed. You went from happy to sad, gloomy, and everyone dies. We'll talk more about that on Sunday. But until then, have a good night. Keep on kicking. And also, leave a comment down below what you thought of this movie. Click like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And we'll see you tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern for more Forever Night. Later. wait for the music to end.
How you heard music?
I
don't hear it at all. I barely hear it. There it is. Yeah, my old music.